My name is Andras Forgacs, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Modern Meadow. What do we do at Modern Meadow? Nothing short of seeking to transform the world of materials for the next century. Let's talk about materials for a moment. Why are materials important? Well, in fact, they're so important that we've named various chapters in human history after them. From the earliest days of civilization, when mankind first took things from nature, stone, wood, wool, silk, leather, and fast forward to centuries and millennia since, when we were able to work with metals. We wouldn't have, for example, the Industrial Revolution if it wasn't for advances in steel. And in the 20th century, there was a huge acceleration in materials technology with the advent of polymers, plastics. They've become ubiquitous. And in the latter half of the 20th century, we wouldn't have the information revolution if it wasn't enabled by advances in semiconductors. It's called Silicon Valley for a reason. And indeed, something else happened in the latter half of the 20th century. We discovered another wonderful material that has a lot of power and potential, and that's DNA. We discovered DNA and the ability to read and then later write with DNA. So it's only fitting that we look to one of the biggest visionaries of the information age. In a later part of his life, he was actually imagining where the future of technology might be headed. And Steve Jobs felt that the biggest innovations of the next century, of the 21st century, were going to come at the intersection of biology and technology. And indeed, one of the interesting things is that as you look at the history of materials, we have this sense that they go from the natural to the more synthetic, right? And today, still, some of our most precious materials are some of our most ancient, things like wood, silk, and leather. So as we reimagine the future of materials and see what biology and biotechnology can bring to it, we want to propose that the next age of materials is the biofabrication age. That in the 21st century, we're going to create a whole new generation of materials that are uniquely enabled by the increasingly powerful toolkit that we have around biotechnology. Biotechnology was first developed to address questions of medicine, life and death. Then we deployed it in crop science and industrial applications. And now the toolkit has become so powerful that we can actually think about affecting our everyday materials that are some of our most common objects. And what biofabrication means is it means building with biology. It's an integration of biotechnology, material science, and design. And the way we at Modern Meadow apply biofabrication is we're inspired by leather. That's the first inspiration or source of materials that we seek to apply biofabrication to. At the end of the day, leather is a biological material. It's made of a protein, collagen, and we figured out a way to produce it far more efficiently with this toolkit. Now, why leather? Raise your hand if you're wearing something made of leather. Raise your hand in this room. That's why. Almost everybody raised their hands. Leather is a ubiquitous material. It's been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's a $200 billion global industry. About 20 billion square feet of leather are produced each year. And yet, that huge raw material base comes at a very costly environmental footprint. And lots of complications in the manufacturing process. So first of all, leather comes from livestock. Livestock is incredibly resource intensive. It is one of the largest users of land, directly and indirectly, one of the biggest users of fresh water, and a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Also, the production of leather is inefficient and it's very fragmented. Where livestock is raised is often very far removed from where animals are then processed and where leather is ultimately fully tanned and made into products. Therefore, you're shipping materials tens of thousands of kilometers typically around the world. And at the end of this incredibly long supply chain, long production, there's a lot of waste. Why? Because leather is a natural material and it's got a lot of irregular shapes and sizes and scars and insect bites. And so typically, anywhere from 30 to 50%, or sometimes even as much as 85% of the material is wasted at the end of a very long life cycle, where lots of steps in the production. And finally, leather has limited properties. An animal is not designed to be a perfect handbag, shoe, or car seat. And so you get what you get off the back of an animal, and if you need the material to be better performing, there's a limited set of properties that you can exploit. So our solution at Modern Meadow is to develop a generation of materials that are biofabricated. We call this ZOA. So ZOA is our platform of materials that are inspired by leather. And we make this by producing collagen, which is the building block of leather, through biotechnology. We've designed yeast, much like you would have yeast that makes beer. We've designed our yeast to be able to brew collagen. And you can see the brew tanks here. At small scale, we're now working with very large partners like Evangelist to scale this up to thousands of liters of production. We then harvest this collagen and assemble it in different ways to create different material properties, which we can then take through tanning drums. So our technology can actually be produced directly roll to roll, and it can also go through traditional tanning infrastructure. Therefore, all of that art and science that's in tanning that applies that last mile variation and a lot of the beauty to the material can be applied to this substrate as well. And so the advantages, I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if the only advantage we needed was that it's better for the planet? That would be wonderful. But we have to create a material that actually first appeals to the consumer, that it can win on performance and it can win on look and feel. So we're creating materials that are inspired by leather but not meant to imitate it, that we can actually create new designs and new performance possibilities. We can radically simplify the supply chain, make the production less than a week, shorten the material miles to from thousands to hundreds or less, and create something that doesn't harm animals and doesn't harm the planet. Thank you very much.